Let's kind of get a slow roll going here while David and Josh get back up here. I'm Kai Holland, and I'm one of the organizers of the 1 Million Cups here in Anchorage. Megan is here, another organizer. Melanie, I think you're part of the organizing group, or at least you are part of it. David, walking in here, is both the manager of this Umoja co-working space, but also part of the organizing group. And we appreciate the Umoja being able to host this. We've got coffee from Alaska Coffee Roasters here also, but David and Jasmine, and some of you know, have created this new space, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to be here to get together. 1 Million Cups is a national program that was started by the Kauffman Foundation. I've lost track, 10 plus years ago, maybe 15 years ago, around the idea, you know, if we could get a million, if people could get together and have 1 million cups of coffee, how would the world? And so it's been done around the country primarily. I think it's in a couple hundred cities these days, and it's all generally built around getting together Wednesday mornings, usually 9 o'clock. We're shifting now to 10 o'clock here in Anchorage because of the school schedule, to invite entrepreneurs to come together and share the work that they're doing and to work together to lift up the entrepreneurial community. So this is really a community created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to help everyone pull the work forward that they're working on, and try and figure out how we can help each other. The greatest part of these meetings is usually the networking that happens. So I appreciate everyone getting here and chatting, introducing themselves, everyone, and there'll be time afterwards. David and Umoja has invited us to be able to stick around afterwards. We're not getting kicked out, so if you need to, get a hot spot and hook up and do some work here, it's a great co-working space. I'm glad you're here. The format of 1 Million Cups is to invite a presenter, or sometimes two in a week, to do essentially about a 6-minute presentation on what they're working on. This is not a business pitch. It's not a sales pitch. This is not a place to try and drum up business. This is really about sharing what you're working on in your entrepreneurial journey and sharing it with the community. And then we usually have about a 20 or 30-minute discussion about that idea, whether it's helping that person figure out resources or just getting feedback. It's not only great for people that are in early stage, and I get a lot of folks saying, well, I'm not ready to present yet. Well, then that means it's a good time to come share what you're working on. This is not a place where you have to be ready to present. This is a place to come share what you're working on and to work towards being ready for whatever your next step is. And so we'll probably see a lot more folks here in the next couple months, because this has always been a great stepping stone for folks getting ready for the Arctic Innovation Competition, the Innovation Summit pitch, the Alaska Angel Conference pitches. This is a great place to come and share your work and maybe the pitch you're working on, to kind of get some feedback on it and say, does it make sense? I mean, there's no end of people that have done pitches, and at the end of it, somebody raises their hand and says, what are you doing? That tells you that the pitch needed a little more work. So anyway, I've taken too much time on this already, but that's the format. A few minutes this morning, we've got Martina and the group with the Alaska Angel Conference is going to share what they're working on, and this, I think, is the fifth now, thank you, of the Angel Conference. They're going to share what's going on for this year's new program. We're excited about this. We'll have time afterwards to discuss that program, your questions, suggestions, everything else. We'll have some time later for some community announcements and wherever else it may go, but it should be done by 10, but you're welcome to stick around later for some more coffee. Just as far as a technical bit of background here, this week I just got the microphony, speakerphony kind of thing here. I've not been able to conquer the lavalier setup here, so we'll get noise out of that. I hope it's loud enough. I'll do my best to make it loud enough. But as we're asking questions and answers, unfortunately, we're going to have to project into the magic box here, and may repeat that if there's any trouble online with folks hearing that, to do that. So that's the technology. So if you're ready, Martina, and want to jump on and introduce yourself, we'll begin with the Alaska Angel Conference.
Can you see everything okay? And can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can. Are you guys okay for Zach hearing in the back and whatnot? Okay, I think I've got you. Let me just make sure I've got you cranked up as loud as I can. Okay, you're good to go.
Am I able to see, turn it around so I can see everyone, or do I just get to look at myself?
I turned the camera around. Are you seeing
there?
The
Yeah,
room now?
perfect.
How about, I can't
Hello.
see it.
Awesome. Okay, well, hello, everybody. My name is Martina Warden. I am a program officer at the Juneau Economic Development Council. And so I'm here to talk to you about this year's Alaska Angel Conference. It's our, like Melanie mentioned, our 5th year doing the Angel Conference. And each year it switches between 3 different host cities, Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. And Juneau is the lucky host this year, but we still have folks on our organizing team from all over, including Melanie there in Anchorage. And why we do this, our goal for the Angel Conference is really to strengthen Alaskan startups, build our ecosystem, and create new Alaskan angel investors by supporting them through this process of making $100,000 or more collective investment. And so really our goal is to further this Alaskans investing in Alaskans. And so why should you care? Why should you be interested? Most obviously, the chance to get a $100,000 or more investment in your startup. But beyond that, I want to mention that some folks, each year we've had a sidecar investment of some form or another. So just because you don't receive the $100,000 investment, folks who participate in the conference have met future investors and mentors and connections as a result of the conference. And so it's a great opportunity for mentorship, to get feedback from experienced investors, and you build a community and network of entrepreneurs, and you learn all about angel investing, about different deal types, etc. So it's a really valuable opportunity and a really great experience. And just to put on your radar some things coming up in the next month, we have office hours that start today. So right after this session, actually, every Wednesday from 11 to 12. So if you have any questions about the Angel Conference, you just want to chat to us about your business idea, or whether you want to figure out if it's a good fit for the Angel Conference, questions about the application, anything, stop in. We're going to be doing another info session specifically for startups later this month. And then we're going to do an in-person meet and greet in Anchorage at the beginning of February. So stay tuned for more information on that. But most importantly, the deadline to apply is on February 10th. And the easiest way to do that is to go to our website, akangelconference.com. And for investors that are interested, we have a little investor tab that has an investor interest form, and we have our entrepreneur application. And this is also where we'll post about events going on. We have a calendar where you can connect to the office hours and all the good stuff. And the application is just a Google form. It's pretty straightforward. But once again, if you have questions, need help with any of it, we're more than happy to help. And so getting into what the actual conference itself looks like, it's broken up really into 2 phases. And so phase 1 is February 21st through March 28th. And so that starts with our first meeting, our kickoff event on the 21st. And then we meet every week on Tuesdays from 4:30 to 6:30. And this phase is primarily, we do workshops. So we have each year we've done a pitch workshop for startups. We've done workshops with investors on how to give better feedback, how to be quality mentors, what to expect during due diligence. We've gone through different deal types, etc. And then another big part of this phase is the pitches. And so during week 3, startups will do their first round of pitching, and this is meant to just be a practice. We know pitching can be very intimidating, and so it's to get that out of the way, get some good feedback, ask questions. And then during week 6 is when startups will do their second pitch. And after this, the investors will deliberate and select 4 to 6 finalist companies that will move on to the second phase of the conference. And so everyone who participates in the conference will participate from February 21st through the end of March. And only 4 to 6 companies will advance on to the second phase. And the first phase tends to be lighter in time commitment. We just have our once a week meeting. And then as for outside time commitment, it's primarily the work and time you spend refining and working on your pitch. And then phase 2 is our due diligence portion of the conference. And so that runs April 4th through our final event on May 10th. And during this time, the investors will form due diligence teams. And so there'll be a lead and a couple investors. And so each finalist company will have a due diligence team that they work with throughout this entire process. And really the goal is to work with these companies and gather all the information that investors need in order to make a decision on whether or not they want to invest. And so they'll be asking lots of questions to better understand the company, their business plan, going through financial documents, all of that. And for investors, they'll continue the weekly meetings on Tuesdays as our check-in and update, and then startups will meet individually with their due diligence teams. And so this portion tends to be a little bit more time intensive because you're working to compile all the information and that investors need. And at the end of this phase, right before the final event, investors will get together and make their final decision on which company to make the $100,000 investment into. And then our final event is in Juneau on May 10th. And that's when the finalists will do one last pitch to the public and the winner will be announced. So the final event itself is in Juneau on May 10th, but the whole conference is virtual. So it's statewide. It's meant to be as accessible as possible. We want people from all over. Yeah. And just to give a little bit of a sense of what we look for in companies that apply, I want to preface with this is our ideal company and what we strive for. But if you do not meet all of these requirements, that is okay. We still want you to apply. But we are looking for companies that are based in or at least have significant operations in Alaska, that are looking for an investment between 100 and 200,000. They have a product in market, large addressable market size, plan to scale, predictable revenue growth. But once again, that is not you. That is okay. We still want you to apply. And if you are unsure, then come to our office hours, talk to us, and we can let you know if this conference makes sense for you. And it's pretty common that we'll have folks that apply and participate in the first phase of the conference, but we let them know early on that their company isn't the best fit for an investment from the Angel Conference, but that they're welcome to participate through phase 1 to get that feedback and participate in the workshops and practice pitching and whatnot. But that is my nice little overview. I would love to hear any questions that folks have about the conference, and any ones that I can't answer, I will direct to Melanie.
That's good, Martina. Thank you again. Why don't we take a second? Melanie, you want to introduce yourself since you're on the hot seat as also here, so folks know who you are and what your connection is with all this before we dive into the discussion.
Sure. Hi, everyone in the room and virtually. Oh, do I need to go to Martina, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Flip on the lights, David, too. Okay. Can you see Melanie?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Melanie Lucas-Conwell. I run the Organized State Angel Fund. We're a early stage venture capital fund based out of the municipality of Anchorage, but we've invested in startups. Based out of the municipality of Anchorage, but we invest statewide. We've been investing since 2012 in pre-seed stage companies and later as well across the state. And we've been helping organize the Alaska Angel Conference since 2019, the very first one. And this has been a great way to both beef up and strengthen our entrepreneurship ecosystem, as Martina mentioned, bring in new angel investors in the space, bring the private capital that is in our state to our state's companies as well, so that we truly have our own economy, not just bringing in outside money to our companies here. And it's been a great way for us, for Organic City Angel Fund, to get connected to entrepreneurs and investment opportunities, and also to help our entrepreneurs. I think that covers it. So we've been, 49SF has invested in the Angel Conference annually since the beginning, of course, and we'll continue to invest and play a role in the AAC. This year, we're excited to have the JEDC hosted. We hosted it in 2022. Zach Irving with Prismatex was last year's fan favorite Angel Conference company out of the finalist group. It's been a great time. Cool. Happy to answer any in-person questions. I can even do a in-person office hours following this for those that are in this room, and answer any questions and virtually as well. Thanks, Martina. Great job presenting.
And Martina, just for a sound check, were you able to hear Melanie okay?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, fantastic, good. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to tee this off just because it's kind of top of mind. Can one of you kind of clarify who an angel investor is and who is able to participate as an investor in the program in terms of what a typical SEC angel investor is, but for this program, what investors are able to participate? So we kind of clarify that right from the very beginning.
Martina?
Yeah, so Melanie, you are welcome to follow this up if you have anything else to share, but angel investors are typically individual investors that invest in really early stage companies. And so I think a helpful way to frame angel investing is a lot of times at the very beginning, startups or entrepreneurs will invest personal capital, or they'll get friends and family to help finance to get them off the ground. And so this usually happens after that, but before companies grow and become developed enough to attract like institutional investors or maybe apply for bank loans. And so angel investing tends to fall in that very early stage. And so for angel investors, our requirements are that you have to be an Alaska resident. But you do not, one thing that's really neat about the Alaska Angel Conference is you do not have to be an accredited investor, versus typically that is a very large barrier, but due to the crowdfunding act that exists in Alaska, it allows anyone to participate. And how we do it is it's basically like all the participants pool their funds together in order to make this collective $100,000 or more investment. Melanie, I don't know if you have things to add.
Expanding on the accredited investor specifications. So nationwide, well, the SEC, federal SEC defines an accredited investor as an individual with an income of $200,000 or more, an individual or spouse that needs $300,000 and assets of $1 million plus. And those individuals.
Melanie, can you come a little bit closer to the?
So an accredited investor, as defined by the SEC, is an individual who has an income of $200,000 or more annually, or with a spouse $300,000 or more, and $1 million in assets. Fact check me as well, and check with the SEC what the specifications are, but that's what generally the numbers are. And those individuals can invest unlimited amounts of capital in early stage startups, since the SEC is trying to protect those that might not have large amounts of assets from making risky investments, from being predatory investments and losing all their funds and then declaring bankruptcy as an individual, for example, is the general idea. But Alaska has a state statute called the Innovate Alaska Act that has an exemption from those federal SEC rules for Alaska residents investing in Alaska-based companies, which is what Martina was mentioning, that allows accredited and unaccredited investors to invest in Alaska-based companies. And that's what the Alaska Angel Conference is based on, this state statute. And Alaska was one of the few states that passed such a thing before crowdfunding, as we think about it, from WeFunder, Republic, all the different crowdfunding platforms that existed. So Alaska is an innovator in that sense, in that aspect. Is there a minimum? There is a minimum for angel investors, $5,000 or more per investment unit. So there are two ways for angel investors. If you invest $5,000, you receive 1 unit of investment in the Angel Conference, and you receive 1 vote towards whoever the finalist startup is. If you invest $10,000 or more, we'll probably take more than 10,000, but 10,000, 2 units, and you'll receive 2 votes towards the finalist company. And so that's how the finalist companies are decided, by a vote of the investors at the end of the conference.
It's a typical amount of investors pooled into one of these.
I want to repeat that one for them.
Yeah, the number of investors annually has changed. We've had large numbers with smaller amounts of investments, and then few investors with larger amounts of money, and then investors have also added on capital towards the end of the conference or even after the winner was decided, because they really liked that company, which is a great sign that whoever the winner was, the decision from an investor's perspective, tied to that, making connections for those that participate. It's varied, is the short answer. But it has been a very, there are also in Bedford, if there is anyone either in the room or online that is thinking about investing, there is the possibility of being a passive investor where you do put in the money, you'll eventually get the rewards as the company repays their investment over time, but you don't need to attend every weekly meeting or educational aspect. You're just in it for the investment. So a few different ways. We try not to turn away capital, but we've been successful in raising over $100,000 for the final company every year.
More questions? Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, if we go around, you might introduce yourself just so we know who you are. I just got rolling this morning, so I'd love to catch up with some names, so I may not have a top line. Yeah, just quickly.
So I'm Stone Warner. Been in Alaska for about 20 years, just retired from the military. I own multiple businesses here in Alaska, so this is like very interesting. I'm very interested in it. I own Central Road, Alaska, the Diamond Center Mall. I'm a contractor. I own OCD Contracting, real estate agent. My wife owns a Lindenstein's hair salon. We just closed a beauty supply store. So the entrepreneur, we're heavy in entrepreneurship. So I am the vice president of Emoji, so I'm the guy that's going to really make this place look amazing. So this will probably be the last time we have this, sticked up. We'll have a motorized projector next week.
Yeah, we're upgrading.
Yeah, we're upgrading the building. So yeah, I have thousands of questions. But I don't want to start the questions now. I just have that one question.
Yep, give us one.
So is this kind of like Shark Tank, where you like, you do your pitch and the investors help you grow the business with and get a percentage of the company to help you
Yeah.
grow and everything?
Question was, is this like Shark Tank? Yes, at least in the format of it, but much nicer, much earlier stage. And the terms are not as sharp as they do on Shark Tank. And we don't take a percentage of the company before you present, unlike Shark Tank. I hear. So there is, and that's part of the educational aspect of the Angel Conference, is understanding what equity investments are and the different types of equity investments, because they can vary greatly from, it starts off looking like a loan up until a certain point of conversion, convertible note, and then it becomes equity in the business for any amount that is not repaid. To just straight up shares in the business at either current or future valuation of the business. So if those deal terms are not preset prior to the conference, they're discussed with the companies and mostly with the finalist group. Martina was talking about there's phase one with the pitches, she runs the pitches, and then phase two, a select group of companies are selected for the finalists and go and undergo due diligence and much thorough questions. And the exec can share one-on-one experiences about him going through it last year as well. And during that time, that's when we start talking about, well, what are the deal terms that the company might evaluate, are interested in, and then the final deal terms are decided after the winner is selected. So you don't have to go into it thinking, or well, it's helpful for the investors to know what you're thinking, but they don't have to be set yet. Absolutely.
Is the only thing happening in Juneau the actual conference?
Yeah, so the final event on May 10th, where that's events open to the public, so it's where they'll do their final pitch, and we'll usually bring in like a speaker or something, and we announce the winner. And so that will be in Juneau, but the actual conference itself that runs from February through May, that will all be virtual. So you can be based anywhere to participate.
And Martina, just to follow up on that, is the final May 10th Juneau event also streamed so that folks will be able to see that remotely?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so 100% online if you're not Juneau for that, but obviously folks would like to go to Juneau and have the party. Other questions or thoughts about this?
We got a couple of chat, so.
I've got those.
Oh,
Yeah, it was just somebody's trying to catch up with the name of somebody and whatnot. So it's part of that thing.
that can't be done.
Yeah, so the word.
How do the businesses get matched up with the team that will be doing the due diligence?
So normally it's normally based on the investors. And so we usually like to have a mix of like newer and experienced investors on each team. Each team will have a due diligence lead that's usually more experienced and familiar with angel investing. And we also like to have a variety of backgrounds and experiences on each team. Like it's very helpful to have someone on a team who maybe has some familiarity or background with that company's industry or field. And so that is I would say the main approach to selecting the teams, but all of the investors are still able to be involved, and like most of our team meetings with the startups will be open. So if other investors wanted to come, if they had specific questions they wanted to ask and whatnot. So you'll have access to all of the investors throughout the conference. It's really just to make sure that there is a couple folks that are dedicated to getting all the information that is needed from that business.
Got that?
I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask it anyways. And I apologize if it comes across as incisive, I guess. Anyways, why one winner? I mean, in the interest of like diversifying portfolio, why is it only one winner per year?
Martina, did you hear that? Okay, you want me to repeat that?
I did not catch that.
Okay, so the question from Zach is, why is there just one winner at the end of the Angel Conference? Why one versus maybe a couple folks receiving, you know, some portion of the aggregate amount of money that's been raised for the investment?
That's a good question. Melanie, you might have a different answer, but for one, in order for it to be a substantial enough amount of funds to be worthwhile for the company, I'd say that that's a factor. A lot of time, that's why we have the investors pool all of the funds together to make one $100,000 investment, because that's going to make a lot more of an impact for a business than like multiple really small $5,000 investments. Just like the amount of time and work that goes into establishing deal terms and going through due diligence and going throughout this whole process, it's only really worth it most of the time for startups to receive like a semi-substantial amount of funds. So I'd say that that's one reason. And also, Melanie, do you have anything else to add? I'd say that's the primary reason. And usually it's also a big focus of the Angel Conference is to be like an educational experience and for folks to get a lot more out of the conference than just the funding, and a lot of create opportunities for folks to receive investments in the future, like give them the knowledge and the practice of learning the skill of attracting investors and making yourself investable. But
additionally, we modeled the Alaska Angel Conference off of the Seattle Angel Conference, which was one of the very first national angel conferences of this kind. So that was the original. We're just copying what has worked well in other places. San Diego Angel Conference as well. And what we've also found, now that we're in our 5th year, administratively, the fund managers and organizers are all essentially volunteers, and the investors are also, even though they have skin in the game, obviously, since they are a part of the fund itself. There are additional administrative costs for the filings for one company, but there were additional companies as well. It includes the administrative costs because of the different types of filings. If all of the companies do exit and are successful, or even not, then that is additional paperwork and accounting that needs to be done, increasing the costs, the administrative costs. And over the last 5 years, what we found, it's also the follow-up from the fund manager over the years of checking with the startups, how they're doing. The fund's lifespan is 10 years. So after 10 years, there has to be something that happens, either the investment defaults or
Melanie, I'm having some people say that they're having trouble hearing the live audio.
Yep.
You can come.
Okay.
It's the closer you come, the louder it gets. So.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you don't get to see me or get, yeah.
You're a lot clearer now.
Okay, cool. You'll just have to imagine me in front of the screen. Where did my sound cut off or entirely cut off?
I could still hear you. It was just like a little,
Okay.
it's just very hard to hear.
Yeah. The first part of it was we modeled off of the Seattle Angel Conference and just reused their model. They have one winner at the end of the conference. So that made it a lot easier for us to get going in 2019. Since then, what we've learned and seen is that there are additional administrative costs and time spent for any additional companies that are involved in the Angel Conference, and just paperwork wise, having to deal with, to work with startups over 10 years, to file any reports, accounting, tax returns, etc. So there are additional costs, and we're trying to keep costs low for the investors so that most of the money of the fund goes to the startup itself. as well as just follow up. The angel investors, the fund managers are, even though they have skin in the game because of their investment, are doing this essentially as volunteers. And so the amount of follow-up and communications with the startups, the more startups you have, the more time that requires and the more drop-offs in communications we see. Does that help, Zach?
Yeah.
If I can just kind of double down a couple points here, some of the larger angel conferences down in the West Coast, San Diego, I believe, and some of the Oregon ones, they have grown to the point where they're now getting enough participation. They're getting $200,000 or $300,000 amounts of money, and they are doing some multiple investment awards on there. At $100,000, as Melanie said, you really want to try and attract a company that's at that level of justifiably needing $100,000. The whole key to this whole thing, from my standpoint, is this is a development process. It's a training fund. It's training investors. And so you don't have to have any angel experience to do this. So if you want to be an investor, get involved in this. And what you're going to be doing is learning how to be an angel investor. So this is not to bring in existing investors, which we want some of them, but this is really trying to get folks that don't have any experience who want to learn how to do angel investing. But to get the value out of this, you want to be making a big enough investment that it really matters, and that the due diligence is going to be thorough, and that the companies are at a stage that they could engage you in the kind of due diligence you do with an investment that size. We could do, you know, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 investments in startups, but typically those startups at that stage, they maybe have a business model, they maybe have a little bit of a business plan. You're not going to get a very good experience doing a tough due diligence at that level. Somebody that's ready for $100,000, they've probably taken it to another level. But this is also an opportunity for entrepreneurs to get into this process, because you get to learn what it's like to start working with angels and how to get ready. So the entrepreneurs coming into this don't really have to have any experience working with investors. That's good. This is where you're going to get that. And the investors coming in don't have to have any experience being investors or working with entrepreneurs. That's what this program is all about. But it is putting a big enough nut out there that is going to bring in some, you know, higher caliber startups that are ready for bigger investment, and the quality of what you can do working with the folks and the due diligence and the final deal terms are going to be sophisticated enough that when you get done with this, our hope is that some of, not necessarily all of, but some of the people that go through this track will then go on to be part of our Alaska Investor Network, or may go off and do their own angel investors on their own, you know, outside of a syndicated network. So we're trying to build the capacity in Alaska for more investors and more investable founders and startups.
And to the point about meaningful due diligence, investors during the second phase of the program spend about 3 to 6 hours a week on due diligence. So doing due diligence at that level for 5-6 weeks for a $20,000 investment, there's not as much reward there for the investor.
Yep. Question back there, and I'll repeat it as needed. Go for it.
What kind of questions or information will be required after it's built due diligence from the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, fair enough. So Martina, in case you couldn't hear, the question is, what kind of information is going to be needed for due diligence? And pretty broad question, but I don't know if you want to kind of hit the high points on the due diligence checklist or criteria you have.
So it varies a little bit based on what stage a company is at. So a company that's further along, we're gonna, like, whether you're pre-revenue or post-revenue, if you're pre-revenue, you don't have any revenue to share with us, so there's nothing for us to look at. But I would say some of the main things we look at are, yeah, any financial information. So if you do have any revenue, or if not, then any financial projections that you have. If some folks, like anything that would go into a business plan, so any market research that you've done, we'll look at your team. If you have other folks on your team, their background, their experience. Some of it will involve like reference calls to folks you've worked with, mentors, talking to customers. Melanie, other things to add?
No, those are the key. Most of a more fleshed out business plan
It is varied. What I would say is it's basically due diligence is a test to see if what you think you're investing in is what you're really investing in. So it's different for every single one. It's kind of like going out and buying a house. You kind of figure out what are the strengths, weaknesses, you want to know what you're getting into. So you're looking at the financial structure of the business, who's involved, what's the product, the market, is the product really what they say it is? We don't want to have a Thoranics kind of problem here where somebody's got, lots of, spit and polish, but there ain't, nothing actually behind it. So it varies with each business, but you're really testing to see, is this thing what we think it is?
Yeah, and really to like understand the ins and outs of the business and how they intend to operate, because we'll go through several rounds of pitches and Q&As, and it usually isn't till like a few pitches and a few conversations in that, like for me at least, that I start to really be like, oh, okay, I understand. I get what it is that they're doing. Like I think you can understand on a higher level, but to really zoom in and make sure you understand the nitty-gritties of that business. And so that you don't have any other questions as an investor moving forward.
Are those places to be understood collaborative, or are they expected to be like in a concrete place? Like where's the like a lot of people need consulting along the way from these plans. Is that like an integral part of it, or are you expected to have these things fleshed out by the time of the result?
So Martina, just in case you couldn't hear the question, I think as I understand it, this due diligence process, the question is, are you expected to have all of the items that are going to be, considered doing due diligence already finished and fleshed out and, really well developed, or is it more something that can be developed along the way? And I've got my opinion, but I'll let you guys have a shot at it. And I don't know how you dealt with that in the past, Martina. For example, if you find out the business plan is kind of half done.
That is a great question. Definitely the more preparation that a business comes in with, the better. I think it makes the process a lot smoother. It also means a lot less work on your behalf throughout the due diligence process. But we definitely have a variety of, I would say, like preparedness of folks who come through. There's definitely like folks who come through that have to spend a good amount of time like putting some of these things together for us, versus there's some who come through with already like a fully fleshed out business plan and all of these components already. And it's just a matter of handing us the answers to the questions that we have. I don't know if Melanie, you have more of like a hard and fast answer to that question, but.
I think during the first phase of the Angel Conference, it's very much about the pitch, and that's all that's looked at. Once the 5 to 6 finalists are selected for the second phase, that's when we look at a lot more information to see. So most companies won't make it to that phase if we have about 20 companies that start off with. And there have been instances where a company is selected as a finalist and they say, thank you, but no, we were just in it for the pitch and the feedback. And that's totally fine and acceptable. So for that group of finalists that is selected, there is absolutely a lot of feedback that is given and shared during that process. And one of the pieces of conversation, informal decision factors that investors have looked at over the last few years for the Angel Conference specifically is how coachable a founder is, and how willing are they to take feedback and how do they take it. So there was certainly a lot of conversations around that, and understanding, between the founder and the investors have a whole different set of knowledge than the founder does. And to some extent, the investors long-term are going to be advisors and involved with the company's growth. So seeing if it's also a fit from that perspective.
Sounds like it's a great opportunity to get practice and knowledge.
Just dovetail on that. I would say it's very collaborative in terms of what you're thinking of. And the nice thing about this is when you get done with it, you will typically have a pretty good deal room finally set up, because you
Yep.
will have found all the documents, you will have put them together. And, I have not been involved with anybody at early stage that has it all done ahead of time. You'll find out they got a couple pieces they've done really nice, did really well on. There'll be a few pieces you start digging into and realize they got a lot of work to do. And that's part of what this process is about, is kind of figuring that out. When you get done, you're then going to be more investable to the next person you talk to, that's going along in there. But the other thing, and I don't know if you want to mention the sidecars, because it isn't about just the one investment at the end. And most of the conferences that I'm aware of, there's been one or two other investments that happen. You want to say more about how that worked out?
Yeah, the sidecar investments are informal. They're not a requirement by investors, but what we found is because the investors are so invested in the process and through the due diligence process, they find out a lot of information about the companies. So there has been, in the last 4 years, conferences, there have been at least one side investment that's been made in one of the finalist companies. As a result of all the due diligence and information that has been gathered. It's not formally part of the angel conference process, but it does happen on the side by similar investors after the fact.
Most angel investing is a very personal thing. I like investing in industrial businesses. And so somebody in the investor side of this thing may find a particular company and they really like that one. And the group as a whole may put their $100,000 in one business, but I, as an investor, may say, you know what, I really like that person. I like their business. I'm going to continue working with them anyway. That's what you're really preparing yourself for. Is it doesn't matter that you get on the final stage and are the final one. What you're really doing is finding the investors in the community that are aligned with what you're doing and what they want to invest in. That's what you're searching for. That's the win in this thing, not the. Don't worry about being the finalist and getting a big check. Worry about developing the capacity to be investable and learning about the investor community so you can find the investors that are interested in what you're doing. Then you're going to win.
I'll add one thing. We've seen companies come back from year to year as well to the angel. I think mostly they've come back once. We haven't seen a 3-time angel conference attendee yet. We'll see what this year holds. But because they didn't win the first time, like, okay, now the company has evolved. I've taken all the feedback, made the connections, and I'm not now much better positioned to come back and, try to get their stake in that 100K.
I'm going to start wrapping up, Zach.
I want to piggyback on what you were saying about how the whole AAC is very much a refining process for the companies too. Because like when we went into it last year, we thought we had our ducks in a row, and I think we kind of did more or less. But going through due diligence with AAC really like highlighted some areas that maybe most investors might not necessarily care about right away, but the fact that we were pushed to build that and develop it and make it presentable really just like, it's like it really helped. It was a very, very beneficial process. So yeah, everything that you said, guys, 100%.
Cool. So Martina,
I'll repeat real fast. if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Zach Irving, founder of Prismatext, who went through the Angel Conference last year, is one of the finalists who did not win the 100,000, but did win the fan favorite. Mentioned that he thought that he had his ducks aligned going into the Angel Conference, but the investors asked good questions and pushed him to find answers to questions he hadn't thought about to refine his process and make him, well, maybe these are my words, make him more investable by other investors down the line. Okay, cool, confirmed. Those were the right words.
All right, so Martina, you know what's coming next, and for those of you, this is how we wrap up these presentations that anyone makes. Martina, how can this community help you?
Apply for the Angel Conference, but also spread the word if there's companies that you think that would be a good fit or folks that you think would be interested in investing, please send them our way. I also would be more than welcome to hear any feedback or things that you think would make the conference more valuable or helpful to you as a startup or an investor. But those are my main things. I don't know if Melanie has anything else.
Nope, that's
That
it.
works. Okay.
Send good people our way.
Okay, so I guess, Martina, if you want to put your contact information in chat for people online, and if anybody wants to follow up, Melanie's here too, you can catch up with her on that. With the last couple minutes here, any community announcements, stuff going on you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I can say something. I'm Shannon Martindale, the English Chamber. We are obviously growing our membership and putting lots of things to get involved. There's our professional group. You don't have to be young to be a part of that. You can be seasoned and still show up. I think a lot of community involvement and things. We've got different councils to be a part of. And if you do have interest in looking into all things chamber, we're having a member orientation next Thursday, the 18th. From 11:30 to 1.
Well, thanks. So chamber intro session next week on the 18th.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
I'm Lisa Noland. I'm the Alaska Women's Business Center Director. And the Alaska Women's Business Center has a new business job coach and trainer, who is Carrie Shepard. Many of you might be familiar with her. She wasn't able to come to vacation, she's in training, but I'm very excited about that. That's just going to expand our ability to do job coaching, business classes, and helping people to access lending.
Well, thanks. If folks are interested, I think you're doing a AMA or session right after this for Angel Conference.
Oh, yes, we are doing office hours for the Angel Conference right after this meeting.
So how do people find that?
Martina, do you mind putting the Zoom link for right after this?
Sounds good.
Starting in 1 minute.
Yeah, good. And then, let's see, Health Tie is having their open innovation meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. That's going to be Airhounds. So many of you know Airhounds, and I think they went through G-Beta before.
And
and
Angel
then-
Conference as well.
And Angel Conference. So that's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. That's online. And they're doing an update on that. Next week, we've got Megan here with Elevated Oats. We'll be presenting on the Elevated Oats business. I invite you to be here next week for that also. The Startup Digest went out finally this morning. It's got some information on new activities and the link to the calendar. Of note is Fairbanks is going to be doing a startup weekend, the third weekend in February. So excited about that. More details to follow. Lots going on. Happy New Year. It's good to see everyone. Any more announcements and then we'll be done.
TEDx Anchorage tickets are on sale right now. That's also the same weekend, February 18th. So the tickets last year sold out in 8 days. It's $100 a seat, and I think the topic is entropy.
Yes, entries, right.
Entropy, thank you. Yeah, so tickets are on sale for that.
Cool. All right.
And there are volunteer opportunities for TEDx as well. If you don't have $100, $100. If you don't have $100 for TEDx Anchorage, there are volunteer opportunities for that as well. And Martina, can you still hear me if I'm shouting enough? Yep, cool.
Yep.
Anchorage Economic Development Council's annual luncheon is next week, I believe. And 2 weeks, in 2 weeks. And they also have volunteer opportunities if you can't afford a ticket or are interested in it. Lots of volunteer opportunities to access these events.
All right, thank you all. Please, if you or you know of
I think
others.
we have a hand raised in the
Okay.
Zoom room.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Demetrius, CEO and founder of Get By. I have some really awesome and exciting news. So Get By will be an exhibit at the upcoming 18th annual Reducing Recidivism and Reentry Conference, which happens February 6th and 7th at the Captain Cook. If you're interested, it's a great opportunity to interface with reentry service professionals, ranging from probation officers to substance abuse counselors to peer support professionals. Interestingly enough, there's also the former Dave's Killer Bread Foundation. I'm kind of giving you some alpha on the agenda here. The very last presentation at the conference will be by the former Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, which is now called the Center for Justice and Economic Advancement at Jobs for the Future. Super long name, a mouthful, but the final presentation will be called Assessing Candidates with Records for Roles in Your Organization. So I don't know if you've heard anything about the story of Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, but it was started by a convicted felon. I myself am a convicted felon, and I am the founder and CEO of Get By. And I'm really thrilled to say that I get to interface with these people from Dave's Killer Bread. So those are my 2 notes. Additionally, the Get By platform will be listed on the Google Play and Apple Store before the end of February. So those are some updates from me. Really stoked. I've already applied to the Angel Conference. Thank you everyone for your time. Oh, also, I just asked on the TEDx LinkedIn, are there exhibit opportunities at TEDx? I know that might be kind of a shot in the dark. I know Megan is somewhat involved with TEDx Anchorage. Just thought I'd ask the question.
No, Lacey is, not me. She'd be the person more so to ask, but I know that last year they did have like a coffee vendor there, and a couple other things, so potentially.
Sweet, thank you very much.
Cool. All right, so and then so Innovation Summit is also happening March 15th, 16th. They have opened up applications for pitching at the Innovation Summit. If you're interested in that one, there's also the applications are open for the Innovation Shorts. Where I was going also was, if you know of a business that would like to present here, please get them signed up. I'm hoping we're going to have a pretty full schedule, because between the business plan competitions, the summits, all this stuff going on, we hope we'll see a bunch of folks coming through here wanting to practice some pitches, share what they're up to. It should be a lot of fun. So, but get them to sign up. The way to get on the schedule here is to go to 1millioncups.com. That's 1 with number 1 /Anchorage. And go on there and click the button present and apply to present to the Anchorage one, or get a hold of one of us, the organizers, and we'll help you get through it. But you got to do the gauntlet on that one. So anyway, thank you. Please stick around, chat, introduce yourself to some other folks, and no reason to rush, but I also know folks probably have things that they may need to get to. So I want to wrap up. Zach, you had something?
AIC just opened up applications too. So that's the Art Innovation Competition. I think they just opened it up yesterday. So
yep, perfect. Thank you.
That too.
It's a big season this springtime.
Yeah,
We'll be outstanding. Thank you all for joining us online or here in person, and hope we'll see you next week again, 10 o'clock here. Thanks for being here. Give David and Moja for hosting us.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye.